People don't break you with direct attacks. They break you with invisible games. Games so subtle, so calculated. You don't even realize you're losing. By the time you notice the pain, the damage is already done. And today, I'll reveal the hidden tactics manipulators use to weaken your mind, control your emotions, and rewrite your reality without you ever noticing. The real question is, are these games being played against you right now? Because if you don't know what to look for, you're already inside the trap. The unseen battlefield of human nature. Most people think manipulation is loud, aggressive, obvious. But the truth is far darker. Real manipulators operate like shadows, quiet, patient, and surgical. They don't confront you head-on. They study you first. They watch your tone, your insecurities, your triggers, your kindness, your silence, your guilt, your desire to be understood. To them, you are not a person. You are a map, full of openings, cracks, and blind spots waiting to be exploited. This invisible battlefield is psychological, not physical. And the people who lose are always the ones who don't know they're being studied. History proves this. During the reign of the Ming Dynasty, court officials didn't kill their rivals with swords. They used whispers, emotional traps, and subtle sabotage, turning friends into enemies and enemies into suspects. Entire political careers collapsed without a single blade being drawn. The lesson? The most devastating war is the one that never looks like war. Let's begin with question: why manipulators choose you? Manipulators don't pick targets randomly. They select with precision. They look for kindness, loyalty, empathy, responsibility, emotional openness. People who want to be good to them. These traits are not virtues, they're vulnerabilities. A manipulator's mind works like this. Why attack the strong when the good willingly hand over their power? This is why ambitious, hardworking men often become victims. Not because they're weak, but because they think others are like them. They assume honesty means honesty in return. They believe loyalty deserves loyalty. They expect fairness from people who only understand advantage. And that's where the silent war begins. The emotional ambush. How they enter your life. Manipulators never walk in as villains. They arrive as comfort. They mirror your emotions. They validate your struggles. They present themselves as the one who finally understands. This technique was documented by Niccolo Machiavelli himself. A leader's greatest threat is never the open enemy, but the ally who enters through flattery. Manipulators use compliments to disarm you, agreement to bond with you, empathy to get access, curiosity to make you feel valued. It feels warm, human, trustworthy. But it's not real. It's reconnaissance. A predator smiling. The psychological hook of creating dependency. Once they earn your trust, they give you exactly what you crave. Attention when you feel ignored. Support when you feel alone. Validation when you feel unseen. Opportunity when you feel stuck. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to make your emotional system attached to them. This hook is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the slow comfort that becomes a craving. This is how entire empires were controlled. In the courts of the Ottoman Empire, viziers would win loyalty not with threats, but with gifts, favors, and small acts of kindness. The recipient wouldn't notice their growing dependence until they couldn't survive politically without that support. Manipulators today use the same playbook. They don't dominate you immediately. They make you need them. Now you have to rewrite your reality. Once the hook is in, they start rewriting your world. Gaslighting doesn't begin with denial. It begins with doubt. A small contradiction, a subtle correction, a rephrased memory, a slightly different version of the story. Are you sure? I think you misunderstood. That's not what happened. You're overthinking. You're too emotional. These statements look harmless, but they attack the core of your power, your ability to trust your own mind. And when you can't trust your mind, you hand control to theirs. Manipulators don't need to change reality. They only need to make you question yours. This strategy was used by Soviet interrogators during early intelligence operations. They didn't torture physically. They manipulated perceptions, events, and emotions until the victim doubted their own thoughts. You don't need a prison for psychological captivity, just confusion. The most brutal act of turning your empathy against you. Once your clarity cracks, they weaponize guilt. After everything I've done for you, you're so ungrateful. You hurt me. You're making me look bad. You're not who I thought you were. Guilt is the leash good people wear willingly. Manipulators love empathetic men because empathy is easy to weaponize. All they need to do is act hurt, and you fall into compliance. If they cry, you soften. If they blame, you fold. If they accuse, you explain. If they withdraw, you chase. Guilt makes you feel responsible for emotions that aren't yours. And that is the perfect prison. Now silent conditioning and training yourself without your permission. Manipulators don't force obedience. They shape it. They reward the behavior they want. They punish the behavior they dislike. A cold tone, a missing message, a delayed reply, a small praise, a tiny approval. They train you like a psychological algorithm. Behave how they want. Reward. Behave independently. Coldness. You don't even notice the transformation. You start adjusting your tone, your decisions, your actions, just to stay in their good graces. This conditioning technique is ancient. During the Tokugawa era of Japan, daimyo were controlled through a system called Sankin Kotai, a cycle of reward and restriction designed to train loyalty without visible force. Manipulators today do the same thing. They don't force obedience. They cultivate it. The erosion game is destroying you slowly. Manipulators rarely attack your confidence directly. They erode it. A small insult disguised as humor, a subtle comparison, a faint tone of disappointment, a quiet suggestion that you're not enough effort, not enough loyalty, not enough intelligence, not enough strength. Just a drip of poison every day. Not enough to make you leave, but enough to weaken you. This slow erosion is more deadly than open cruelty, because open cruelty triggers resistance. Silent erosion builds dependence. First of all, identity. Hijacking when you start becoming who they want. Over time, you begin to think less like yourself and more like them. You modify your goals to avoid conflict. You alter your values to fit their narrative. You reshape your opinions to gain approval. Your identity becomes a negotiation. Manipulators don't want you to be strong, independent, or self-defined. They want you to be predictable, manageable, moldable. This is how abusive kings in history controlled their closest advisors, not through fear alone, but by reshaping ambitions and identities. When someone controls who you think you should be, they control everything. At this stage, you lose yourself completely. There comes a point where your reality, your confidence, and your identity have been bent so far. You defend the person who is breaking you. You justify their behavior. You minimize your own suffering. You blame yourself for their actions. You believe you're the problem. This is the final, darkest stage of psychological capture. By this time, They don't need to manipulate you anymore. Your own mind does it for them, because they've successfully cracked the ultimate foundation, your self-trust. At that moment, you finally see the game, and then something shifts. A sentence, a silence, a sudden moment of clarity, a realization that hits like a storm. You finally see the pattern, the contradictions, the emotional traps, the invisible threads controlling you. The illusion collapses. You're not confused. You're waking up. You're not lost. You're noticing. You're not weak. You've finally opened your eyes. And once you see the game, you can never unsee it. But awakening is not enough. You must learn to fight back. Because manipulators don't stop just because you understand them. You don't escape manipulators by resisting their tricks. You escape by transforming into the type of person who cannot be manipulated in the first place. Because manipulators don't target the strongest. They target the blind. They exploit the unaware. They feed on people who think, I'm too smart to be deceived. Every fallen empire, every broken leader, every destroyed friendship, every collapsed relationship began with one mistake. Someone thought they were safe. But the truth is brutal. You are only safe when you are aware. You are only free when you are self-defined. You are only untouchable when you have eliminated the psychological vulnerabilities manipulators prey on. This chapter is your psychological transformation. Not into a villain, not into a tyrant, into something far more dangerous. A person who sees everything, who detects every hidden move, who cannot be controlled, guilted, bent, or broken. Now, you will rise the moment you see detachment through the mask. The first step in becoming unbreakable is the most difficult. Emotional detachment from the manipulator. Not physical distance, not blocking, not walking away. Detachment of the heart and mind. Manipulators rely on your emotional involvement. The moment you detach, their power collapses. Think of the ancient strategist Sun Tzu, who taught, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Manipulators practice this perfectly until you become the one who withdraws emotional energy. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is the realization that their praise is bait, their criticism is control, their kindness is conditional, their love is leverage, their approval is a chain, their anger is a tactic. Detachment breaks every one of these tools instantly, because manipulators can't control someone who no longer reacts. This is your first rebirth. First of all, reclaiming your internal authority. There is a reason manipulators weaken your self-trust. A man who doubts himself obeys others. A man who trusts himself becomes uncontrollable. Reclaiming internal authority means trusting your memory, trusting your instinct, trusting your boundaries, trusting your perception, trusting your emotional signals, trusting your judgment. Manipulators work like viruses. They inject doubt to weaken you from within. But once you rebuild your inner authority, their influence becomes powerless. This was the secret of the Spartan warriors. They believed so deeply in their own judgment that psychological warfare failed to shake them. They were trained to say, "I will stand, even when the world shakes." This is the mindset you adopt now. You stop asking, "Am I overreacting? Am I being too sensitive? Maybe they didn't mean it." And you start saying, "I felt it. I saw it. That's enough." Internal authority is the shield that makes your mind impenetrable. The no weakness doctrine. What it will do: it eliminating manipulation. Entry points. Manipulators don't break strong men. They slip through cracks. So now, you seal every crack. There are 4 weaknesses manipulators exploit. First, you need to be liked. Manipulators love people who want approval. Remove this need, and you remove 70% of their leverage. Second, the fear of conflict. Manipulators use your desire for peace to attack you. Learn controlled confrontation, calm, firm, unemotional, and their intimidation fails instantly. And then, third is the desire to fix others. The more you try to help them, the more they drain you. Withdraw this instinct, and you starve their power supply. And last is the weakness of over-explaining. Manipulators force you to justify yourself so they can twist your words. Once you stop explaining, their confusion tactics die. The no-weakness doctrine is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming unexploitable. Just like the Mongol generals who conquered vast empires, not by being brutal alone, but by having no psychological openings for betrayal or deception. Your most dangerous power, the silence move. Silence is a weapon you've never been taught to use. Manipulators depend on your reactions. Silence removes both. The emotional data they feed on. The chaos they hide behind silence forces them into confusion. They start revealing themselves. They over-explain. They lose the advantage. This move was known in ancient diplomacy as the empty seat strategy. Emperors used it to make ambassadors expose their intentions without interrogation. You can do the same. When a manipulator insults you, guilt trips you, gaslights you, tries to provoke you, you respond with nothing. Just calm, powerful silence, not avoidance, not submission, observation. The manipulator becomes uncomfortable. Then they become anxious. Then they panic. Because silence shows one thing: you are no longer under their control. Turn their tactics against them. Once you understand how manipulators operate, you can flip the game. Mirroring their moves removes their power. If they withhold, you withhold more. If they guilt trip, you ignore it completely. If they provoke, you stay stone cold. If they lie subtly, you respond with facts calmly. If they pressure, you slow down. This reversal disrupts their entire strategy. Because manipulators expect emotional chaos, not calm retaliation. When you reverse the game, they lose certainty. They lose timing. They lose control. They lose confidence in their own tactics. This is exactly how Byzantine generals defeated rival factions during political sabotage. Not by attacking directly, but by turning their opponent's manipulation back onto them. Reversal transforms you from target to threat. The most brutal act you can do is the total break, cutting off the psychological supply. Manipulators don't need access to your body to control your life. They need access to your attention, reactions, emotion, confusion, guilt, fear, curiosity, explanation, need for closure. Cut these off, and their power evaporates. When you stop feeding their emotional superiority, they can't gaslight a man who no longer defends himself. They can't guilt someone who no longer feels responsible. They can't confuse someone who trusts his own mind. They can't control someone who refuses to engage. They can't break someone who has rebuilt his identity. The final break happens, not when you walk away, but when they realize they can no longer reach your mind. This is the moment you become truly dangerous, because they understand they have lost. The unbreakable mind of your new default state. You're no longer naive. You're no longer open to invisible games. You're no longer vulnerable to emotional traps. You've upgraded into a different type of human. You see intentions instantly. You read manipulative patterns in seconds. You detect energy shifts effortlessly. You're immune to guilt. You don't crumble under pressure. You don't fear conflict. You don't need approval. You don't explain yourself. You lead with calm dominance. You walk with Silent power manipulators avoid people like this. They cannot infiltrate your mind. They cannot influence your decisions. They cannot reshape your identity. You have risen from manipulated to immune, from victim to force, from unaware to untouchable. Now you stand at a crossroads, because awareness alone is not enough. Transformation alone is not enough. Strength alone is not enough. The true power comes from one realization. Manipulators survive only when you stay blind. They die the moment you wake up. People will still try to gaslight you, shame you, confuse you, test your boundaries, pull you back into weakness, guilt you into silence, manipulate you into obedience. But now, you're not the same person. You've learned to see the shift in someone's tone. You catch the inconsistency in their words. You notice the pressure behind their kindness. You recognize the intention behind their silence. You hear the hidden demand buried in their apology. You sense the emotional hook beneath their compliment. You see everything. You're no longer walking into traps. You're recognizing them from miles away. You're no longer reacting emotionally. You're observing with strategic calm. You're no longer bending to guilt. You're standing in self-trust. You're no longer explaining yourself. You're speaking with clean authority. You're no longer afraid of losing people. You're afraid of losing yourself. Because once you've seen hidden manipulation, you can't unsee it. Once you've tasted psychological freedom, you can't tolerate chains. Once you've rebuilt your identity, you never hand it away again. This is the end of the story manipulative people tried to write for you, and the beginning of the one you write for yourself. A story where you think clearly, you trust yourself, you move with intention, you choose who enters your life, you decide what affects you, you control your emotional energy, you live by standards, you see people for what they are, not what they pretend to be. Manipulators don't fear strong men. They fear men who are self-aware, men who understand the game, men who refuse to play by invisible rules, men who control themselves and therefore control the outcome. You are now one of those men. Not broken, not confused, not controlled, not played, but awakened, strategic, unbreakable. This is not the end of your journey. It's the moment your real power begins. Because from this point forward, no one gets to break you silently. No one gets to rewrite your reality. No one gets to play invisible games with your mind. You've stepped out of the shadows, and once a man sees the hidden game, he becomes the most dangerous player on the board.